accelerating global innovation ecosystem. As you all know, the world is changing very fast, and so are its needs.
Nice to meet you.
And the needs keep emerging every time. The good news is that technology has played a major role and has constantly been innovating and evolving. For all of us in this room, these innovations touch us almost every day. In fact, the life cycle of innovations is getting shorter. The adoption is becoming much, much faster. What used to take 5 years to reach 1 billion people probably takes just about a year, year and a half now to do that. The innovations are happening in developed countries, they're happening in developing countries, they're happening in business, they're happening in academia, in large companies, in small companies. So I think it's all across that these innovations happen. Some of it make it, some of it don't make it, and I think we have to find ways and means of doing and ensuring that most innovations reach where they intended to be. A lot more innovations are still waiting in the wings. These innovations will help the whole world and the entire humanity, and I'm sure today's panel will focus on what we could do to be creating the ecosystem to support it. We could have no one else better than José Pacheco, who is leading this. José happens to be a person from Mexico, but I think he's more of a Cambridge person in the US. It's good that you're spanning these two countries and ensuring that things happen. He wears various hats, helping students, entrepreneurs to bring technological and scientific innovation into being. He's the co-director of the Masters of Advanced Manufacturing at MIT. He's also the co-founder and chair of the MIT Enterprise Forum, Mexico, and a founding partner of AnyExplorer, a company specializing in geo-browsing. José earned his BSc degree in economics and biology at MIT, as well as Masters in Decision through MIT Sloan Fellow Program. He has today, prior to these roles that he's performing, he worked with angel investment firms focused on investments in Asia Pacific and began his consulting career working with Anderson Business Consulting. So no one else better than José, you to do it. Over to you. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate the kind introduction. Welcome, everybody. We have about an hour to talk, I think, about a very important topic, especially in these times of how innovation ecosystems develop, because they are the engines of economic growth of countries. And here with us, we have a distinguished panel. If you look at your program, there are a couple changes I want to note. First, with us is Leo from Nokia. Nokia, as you know, is not only used to be a handset company and infrastructure company, and Leo will tell us more about their infrastructure business, which they're doing now. So thank you for being with us, Leo. And also with us is Mac. Mac is with Hackers and Founders here in Mexico. He's replacing Jonathan Nelson, who unfortunately could not join us today due to unforeseen circumstances, but we're very fortunate to have Mac, who's in charge of Hackers and Founders here in Mexico, and we'll get a very local and specialized perspective. Also with us is Gustavo Álvarez Moreno from UP Latam. UP is, Latam's obviously part of UP Global. Adam Stale could not be with us today also due to unforeseen circumstances, but we are very fortunate to have Gustavo with us today to discuss UP's activities. And finally, we have César. César for 500 startups. There are no unforeseen circumstances, so César, thank you for being here as well. And so the way we're going to manage this panel is to give each one of our panelists a few minutes to describe the work that they do, a little bit about the organization in which they're working, and maybe to point out one or two things that they see as interesting or innovative developments that they see coming in the future, and basically to give you an opportunity to think about what they're saying. And after that, I have some questions, and hopefully we'll have time for questions from the audience for about 15, 20 minutes at the end of the panel. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Leo, and welcome. So Leo, tell us a little bit about your work with Nokia, a little bit about yourself, and some interesting or innovative things happening in the future that you think we should be paying attention to.
Thank you very much, José. It's a pleasure to be here today. As José mentioned already, I work for Nokia, but the new Nokia, not the old Nokia. So essentially, we have sold all our devices and services business to Microsoft, but we still exist. I mean, some people think that Microsoft has totally acquired Nokia, but that's not the case. We have actually had also another very important business transaction, and that is we have bought from Siemens the stake Siemens had in our joint venture, Nokia Siemens Networks. So now we have integrated the networks part into new Nokia, basically building mobile broadband networks, the networks of the future. We are doing the 4G LTE rollout right now, and we are already doing the research for the 5G networks. So those will be really smart, programmable, future-oriented networks with much higher bit rates, smaller latency. It's going to be really the nerve system of our society, as opposed to just being transmission pipes. So that's the largest part of our business. Then the second part is so-called HERE. We're doing maps, we're doing navigation, location-based services. We have many clients in the internet world. Also Microsoft, of course, is using that on their smartphones, but also the automotive industry, because we have a very good elaborated product here to present. Almost all car manufacturers are our clients in that area. And the third business we still kept is innovation, is patenting, is technology cooperation with other companies, it's technology licensing. So that's also a very future-oriented, impressive business. And together, those three businesses will hopefully help us to realize our vision. And that is to be a technology leader in a world where everything and everybody is connected. And just to give you one idea, imagine that you are driving in your car and suddenly your car uses the brake and you're thinking, what is this? Bad technology, I'm going to switch car brand, and suddenly even perhaps the airbag jumps into your face and you're even more surprised, and then you realize that you have touched another car in front of you, and if your car wouldn't have used the emergency brake, then you would have maybe, it would have saved your life, it had saved your life in any case. How was that possible? The car in front of you, through radio waves, was communicating with your car and was telling your car, I'm going to brake, so you should better do the same immediately. And if the car in front of you was close enough, then it was able to do that just through communicating via radio waves directly with your car. Your car was able to communicate with the car behind you. But now imagine that the car in front of you was at a greater distance. Maybe it was a foggy day, there was mist, and it could not communicate directly with you. Then it would have sent a radio signal to the nearest base station. The base station, being smart, wouldn't have no longer be obliged to send the signal to a data center to evaluate the data. No, it would have been able to immediately react, to send that signal to the car behind you and to tell the car behind you that it should brake before even the person driving the car was able to take any reaction. So that's essentially what some of the things we are working on right now. Me personally, I'm based in Brussels. I'm basically involved in public policy. What I do on a daily basis is managing the political contacts we have with the European institutions, so the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the European Council, where European legislation is made. And that legislation is made basically for the entire continent, for the European Union, consisting of 28 member states, which spans from the Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Finland, to Western Europe, Portugal, Southeastern Europe, Greece, and all the countries that you find in between, except Switzerland. And my role is to interact with the policymaker, to tell them what Nokia thinks about new policy developments in the area of data protection, network security, network neutrality, environmental issues, radio spectrum, and these kind of things. But I have also a global role, and that is on public policy on innovation, and that kind of brought me here. And there I have received from the management the task to study innovation strategies of important countries of this earth. And some of those findings I would like to present today, particularly a Nokia-specific case through which we gained quite some insight and were able to give recommendations to the lawmaker.
Great. Thank you, Leo. And so you brought up the issue of public policy, something to think about in innovation ecosystems, and then a specific technology I want to highlight. You described it, but I want to give it a name. I think you called it the smart Internet of Things that enables new possibilities, something we'll be thinking about and talking more about. So great, thank you, Leo, and we'll come back to public policy. Let me now turn to Mac. Mac, with Hackers and Founders, perhaps tell us a little bit about your work, the organization, and something we should be thinking about during the session.
Yeah, well, I believe in the power of communities to communicate and expand the vision or a grand vision of an ecosystem. Since 2011, I have been working locally through Mexico to build a community around entrepreneurship, around innovation, and I have found, like, as you some people, word of mouth, it starts to behave like a startup. You can start seeing the whole city transform as policymakers get into the community, entrepreneurs, platform companies start looking up because you can create innovation based on individuals that wanna relate to or do something. Hackers and Founders has been going on for 2 years in Mexico, and it's simply amazing the way we started with talking about simple stuff, and now we can talk about innovation on a daily basis. We have been privileged to work with César and Gus around this because we have seen Mexico grow from, especially César, from no tech scene, or at least community-wise, to a full tech scene that expands communities, adopts new technologies, and tries to reach as fast as possible the new things that are coming out of the tech hubs. Recently, you are an example of this. MIT came to Guadalajara. We have been fostering all kinds of events relating to innovation and technology, and trying to drive it to specific sectors is our next step. We're trying to focus on doing experiments based around specific themes. So, for example, there's a big push in our city about the Internet of Things and hardware technology, and we have been pushing it for a year. And so far, a few communities have come up. The MIT is here. There's a new machine lab. Government is interested in it and pushing. So once you have a root of people working towards a common benefit, I see a city or a state or even a country converting into a big startup that tries to accumulate all the individuals and build value for everyone. That's basically.
Thank you, Mac. And so you highlighted the importance of collaboration,
yes,
both from public, but also the individual kind of ground-up entrepreneurs working together in a focused sector, that being an important characteristic, we think, of innovation ecosystems.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Gustavo. Gus.
A pleasure. Thank you. Well, I started off as an entrepreneur a while ago. In 2011, I founded a crowdfunding platform. And that's when I realized that by building stuff that is based out on technology, it improves or catalyzes the possibilities of creating innovation and developing commonwealth. After that, I joined Startup Weekend Mexico, well, Startup Weekend at the time, and I was invited to establish what became Startup Weekend Mexico. Right now we have shifted, we have transitioned towards something bigger, something bolder, which is UpGlobal. UpGlobal is an organization that, it's a non-profit organization that has become the most important movement on fostering communities, entrepreneurial communities around the world. What we do is we use programs such as Startup Weekend, Startup Next, or Startup Digest to bring content to communities that community leaders embrace in order to give possibilities for entrepreneurs. So if you think about it this way, entrepreneurs have different activities and different programs that help them improve their entrepreneurial skills. And these programs are implemented by community leaders, which are people like any of us that are interested in building commonwealth within their communities, their local communities. UpGlobal has been, let's say that UpGlobal has been focusing more on the grassroots communities, on the people, on the talent. And we believe that if you foster and increase the number of people that are, that have possibilities to introduce themselves into entrepreneurship, then they will eventually you will have more and more companies that may bring value to their local communities, to their countries, and eventually to the world. So UpGlobal right now is very focused on creating, so mapping out what an entrepreneur journey is. We have identified 6 different layers, sorry, where an entrepreneur acknowledges that he can become an entrepreneur, that there is a path, an alternative path to explore personal development. Then there is another one that is called Inspire, which is basically the moment where they find out that there are other options and they can start doing things to become a founder. Once you become a founder, you start a company. And after creating a company, you join this movement of scaling up, and eventually you will become a champion that may be company that belongs to the 500 Fortune companies. And then it becomes like a virtuous circle where these founders, where these businessmen can come back to their community and give back. So we have identified these different paths, and we are focused on the very first 2 steps of it. We're focused on inspiring entrepreneurs, and we're focused on helping them out to develop their skills with different programs. So if you think about the development, you have the individual as a single entity that needs to improve their skills, their connections, their networks, and afterwards, then they build up, they meet up and form teams that also need to develop like team skills. We do that through different programs that are focused on a weekend-based like ability build-up skills. And then we do that, we help teams with another program called Startup Next, which supports teams to build stronger knowledge about their customers and kind of develop what a company needs and what a customer is looking for. So by doing this, we are in a way fostering and supporting these communities with content that will eventually develop other institutions or actors such as investors, such as academia, such as governments, in order to bring them all together to start building those startup ecosystems or innovation ecosystems. So if you think about the way how you can leverage on individual talent towards building an innovation ecosystem, it's very important for us to kind of focus on the individuals in order to lead a movement or a shift towards developing these communities.
Very interesting. And I want to highlight a couple of things you said. All was very interesting, but the role of role models, aspirational role models saying, I can do this, or there's a path that I can follow that someone else has tried and I can follow that, I think is the first. And the second is on the giving back, that it takes a generation or 2 or 3 to really solidify an entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. But it's all about the same people being entrepreneurs, then investors, then mentors, etc. And that takes time, right? So thank you for those comments. And so actually now, turning it over to César, who is an entrepreneur who has become an investor and is also a mentor and giving back to the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Mexico. César, please tell us a little bit about 500 Startups.
Thank you, Jose. It is true. I've been an entrepreneur for 13 years now. I started my first company at 17 and failed. And probably that's why I kept interested in the matter of entrepreneurship and how do you increase the amount of innovation in the world. Eventually later, I started traveling Silicon Valley, and I fell in love with the idea of communities. I realized that most of the innovation wasn't happening in big companies, but was happening in garages and dorm rooms and hackathons, and the people were getting together to fantasize about the future and build it together. So coming back to Mexico, I started working with a few friends to develop hackathons and communities, co-working spaces, and that eventually led me to realize that there was a bigger issue in terms of access to capital. So the last company that I started was actually a venture fund that entirely focused on Mexican early stage startups. And that was acquired in 2012 by one of the most interesting players at the time, 500 Startups. So now I am a partner at 500 Startups. And well, what is this company? Well, it's quite possibly the most active seed fund in the world. We have invested in over 850 companies in over 40 countries. And actually, we have an office here in Mexico where we do most of our investments in the rest of Latam and the Spanish-speaking world. So that's where I work most of my days. And what's fascinating about what we're doing is that we're finding entrepreneurial activity everywhere. There's no single spot in the planet that doesn't have entrepreneurial spirit. We're finding talent as well. We're a very diverse team, and we have a very diverse portfolio. We have invested in all races and genders and people coming from all different backgrounds. And by doing that, we realized that that's not an issue these days. There has been a lot of people, these guys including, that have worked providing layers of education and access to networks and information that allow people to start companies. So that's kind of like the solution is there, and we need to keep working on that. What's not really there yet is that in most places, the system hasn't catched up. Particularly, there are gaps in access to capital, and there are gaps in access to networks. People that have the power to use technology and innovation at a large scale. So that's what we're doing now. We're trying to provide a layer of access to very quick and transparent financing for early stage startups, and provide them with access to global networks of partners and mentors that can help them not only start companies, but grow those companies. So lately, we have been labeling that mission or vision as 500 VCs. So how do we go from finding and investing in companies at scale to finding and nurturing venture capitalists at scale, so we can help the world move faster? And I'm not only talking about the developed world, but I'm actually talking about every single spot. So that's what we're doing now. I'm very enthusiastic about the future. I think there are some developments right now, biotech, wearables, self-driving cars, artificial intelligence, that will transform the way we do things and will bring us to a closer stage to abundance. I'm a true believer in exponential technologies, but in order to bring that to most of the population of the planet and make it sustainable, we really need to empower more people than the ones that are empowered right now. So I think that's the big challenge, and the meta developments that will allow that are radical innovations in access to capital and radical innovation in access to education. I think those two will eventually allow much more people to start new companies, solve a more diverse set of problems, and help mankind succeed.
Thank you, César. Interesting points about exponential technologies providing access. You know, we usually think about access first and then technology later, but using technology for access. The other point I want to highlight that I think you touched on is that in order to develop innovation ecosystems, the system has to catch up. The local region has to catch up. And actually that is, I think, very relevant for this audience. In the audience, we have people from government, people from some very large companies, people from academia. And so I want to explore a little bit first the role of public policy in setting the macro context. So that provides a nice entry into maybe Leo talking a little bit about public policy and the role that public policy plays in supporting and nurturing ecosystems, given your work that you're doing in Nokia and specifically.
Yes, so the work I have done is really to study and analyze the innovation strategy of the United States, of the European Union, of Finland, of Japan, South Korea, and China. And I mean, innovation strategies are not a recent phenomenon. It has started already in the 70s, where Japan created a vision and decided that it needs to develop an innovative and knowledge-based economy, and that its industry was interwoven with the global industry, and that would continue to be so. But it was in the 80s that Finland really invented the first comprehensive innovation strategy. They set up the Innovation Council, which was very close to the Finnish president, and really established the right thinking, the right institutions to get this going. Then, later in the process, you had China and South Korea, which also were very successful in making their industry more competitive, more innovative, and really bringing some of the industries to the global stage, industries that were nowhere before. For example, the car manufacturing industry in South Korea, or software also, or telecom in India. And surprisingly, the USA and the EU were kind of latecomers to this game. The USA was always a bit skeptical about policy intervention and thought we can leave that to the businesses, or if we do something then at regional level, but at national level we don't need anything. But that has changed in 2008 when Obama launched the recovery package for the United States to get out of the economic crisis. And that recovery package was essentially an innovation strategy with a very substantial funding. In the EU, things went a bit differently. In the EU, we had for a long time joint research cooperation which was funded at a European level with billions of euros, but with little results. The European Union analyzed that and found out, okay, we've made some scientific progresses jointly where European universities, academia, research institutes and businesses do joint research. But this has not resulted in bringing products and services to the marketplace. So there has been a rethinking in the European Union. They have launched Horizon 2020 this year, which is much more innovation focused, which really supports you until technology readiness level 8, so really very close to the market. It has many interesting programs there. In my paper, I really look at many things that are essential for an innovation strategy. For example, are the right institutions in place? How is the educational system? For example, in Finland, of course, people know that it's very well developed and very effective, but Korea has caught up and has almost surpassed Finland. How is the research world doing, the cooperation between universities and businesses? How is the intellectual property rights system? There we have a very good system in Europe, but very expensive also. What is the level of venture funding? How does that work? There, of course, the United States are very strong. There's many things that can be learned from there. But some European countries are catching up, notably Germany, that set up new joint public-private partnership funds in this area that are very successful. And then I looked also into the macroeconomic situation of those countries. And of course, I cannot give you a broader, more detailed insight into the paper. I invite you to read it, of course. But what is quite clear is that one size does not fit all. European countries have committed many mistakes. They have thought they can just copy one successful innovation strategy and implement it in their own country. In many cases, it has not worked. The main mistake that they have been doing is not to look at what they have already, where their strengths are. And this is something that is of crucial importance. And this is actually something that Jalisco is doing very well. Jalisco recently has set up a new ministry for technology, science and innovation in place to stimulate the ecosystem. And they really analyzed, so where are our strengths? They have found out, yes, of course, we have a very strong ICT industry. We are good in agriculture, in the agro industry. We are good in health and pharma. And based on these facts, they have invested in these three areas, and they have started to build synergies between the three. So they have really clustered. They have connected ICT with agro. They have connected ICT with health and pharma, and they have connected agro with health and pharma. And I would think that this could turn out to be very successful. This could bear fruits in the years to come. Generally, of course, when you assess what you have, where you are strong, typically less developed countries will have to develop and invest in their educational system and infrastructure to bring their science up to the global level, whereas the situation in very developed countries looks quite different. They normally have quite good infrastructure and all these kind of things in place. The problem there is that the economy is really settled. It has become conservative. The culture generally in the countries have become risk adverse. So what they need is really a kind of creative destruction of the structures. It is, if you look at Europe, for example, which European companies have managed to develop into global blue chips in the last 10, 20 years? Almost none. There's perhaps SAP, but not many others. So the problem in Europe is really a problem of entrepreneurship, risk-taking, stimulation of workplace changes where if you work for a company, if you're employed, then you should be able to at some stage become an academic and vice versa, or decide to set up your own enterprise, or companies should decide, okay, this guy is really nice, let's hire him, he is an entrepreneur, but let's help him pursue his entrepreneurial activities within the company without, with a higher funding within the company. So all these things are clearly lacking in Europe, for example. There are many studies about that. Even in advanced economies such as Finland, the transition rate from employment to self-employment is about 0.6% per year, so almost nothing. And in this context, we have a quite interesting case study, which was kind of born out of a rather sad background. It was a gloomy situation for Nokia. We, for many reasons, lost some of our competitive edge a few years ago. Old Nokia, I'm talking about the devices and services business, not of course about new Nokia. Our current businesses are all profitable and working very well. But old Nokia, a couple of years ago, we had to unfortunately lay off 20,000 people. So a massive amount of people in Finland, but in also all the other countries where we were present. And our management said, well, this is really terrible. What can we do for them? We don't want to just give them a nice compensation package or so. We want to do more. We want to, first of all, kind of try to keep the creative and the innovative capacity in the regions where these people are located, and we want them to have a chance. So what Nokia did, even in the worst situation where we were making considerable losses quarter on quarter, sometimes up to €1 million, we set up dozens of millions aside, and we invested that in the people. We trained them to become entrepreneurs. We gave them seed capital. Many of them put their joined forces, put their seed capital together. We provided them with office space, with equipment, and all that. And the result was remarkable, absolutely fantastic. On that basis, 1,000 startups have been created around Europe in the area of ICT, of engineering, of consultants, but even nutritional consultants or wine bars have been opened, and they all got funding. And this has been taken as a model for good corporate citizenship on one hand, but also for a good social innovation. It has been studied by Finnish universities. They have sent out questionnaires to these new entrepreneurs, and more than 50% have responded, so that's an incredible return rate if you know how these things usually go. And almost all of them were happy. They said, our business is growing, we're employing people, we are successful. Actually, this was something we always wanted to do. We wanted to become entrepreneurs. We just needed this kind of kick. We were too comfortable before in our workplaces, so they thanked us for that. And what can we learn from that? We can learn that in our societies we have an immense creative potential. We have entrepreneurs, but they're dormant. And while, of course, this case is not a very nice one, I mean, you can imagine better situations where you want to incentivize people to set up their own business. There are certainly many learnings that can be taken from public authorities to really set up similar stimulus and incentivize people to set up their own business and to become entrepreneurs.